instructor, Prab Nair. Thank you, my friend, and even though we've never met and we live tens of thousands and thousands of miles apart, I truly do consider you my friend, Prab. You always have my best interests in mind, and you never ask me for anything. I truly appreciate that and will not forget it. Thank
Thanks,
you
Luke.
to
Thank you so
you.
much.
No problem. Thank you to you and your entire team for setting up and hosting this webinar. It
And
is
thanks
an
to you
honor
taking out your busy schedule and taking out from
anytime.
your busy schedule this session. And it will be definitely a great session for our future aspirants who are preparing for the CISSP.
I hope so. I hope to do my best because it is an honor and a privilege, as you said, for me to be here with every one of you who are taking time out of your busy lives studying for the CISSP exam, balancing your job and family life, maybe in a little bit of anxiety over our global pandemic that we're all going through together. But if you think about it, this quarantine has brought all of us together. Whenever we get to finally travel and do things again, we will always have this commonality of COVID, even if we're complete strangers to each other. We will always have something to talk about of how we dealt with our lives, how we managed our lives during COVID. And I bet no matter how different each of us are, we will all have shared the common situation of being thankful to have our health, our families, and just going through it together, just like we do for the CISP exam.
True.
Thank you for
That's
your
true.
precious time, and I promise to do my best to try to explain how to think like a manager for the CISP exam.
That's great. And one small guideline for everyone, participants, if you have any questions, you can basically type your question in the chat box. As you know, it can interrupt the entire session if you basically unmute and speak. So this is a basic hygiene we need in the session. You can just share your questions in the chat box, and then the last, you can happy to help with those answers. Even I'm there to answer those questions. Will it okay? So I
No
just
problem.
want a small request from everyone. Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, hello, Aditya. I see you. I am sure that on the course of your journey to the elusive CISP certification, you have heard countless number of times that you have to think like a manager. As a former person who was also on his quest to the CISP, which was filled with sleepless nights, missing time with my family, not being able to watch the World Cup or the newest Netflix series, and just sacrificing all the time I had, all I heard was, you have to think like a manager. You have to think like a manager. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just a network security engineer, a technical person by profession. My mindset is just to fix the problem as fast as possible before my manager yells at me. I mean, I have a manager at work, but how am I supposed to think like him? Am I just supposed to tell people what to do, like my manager does to me without knowing any of the technical concepts?
Larry, just give me a second. I think you get muted. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, like you can
Am I,
unmute yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Thank
am I
you.
back? Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. So nobody could really give me a clear and concise answer to this question, or even if they did, it was never the same answer, which was frustrating. Nobody gave me the same answer twice about thinking like a manager, because there really isn't a set procedures or set amount of instructions on how to do that. You know, someone would say it's all about preserving human life, and the other would say it's all about saving money. Someone else said it's about making sure there are processes in place, or not fixing the issue, but finding a long-term solution. Or the very classic one that we all hear about, don't unplug the server if there is an incident. You've all heard it, I'm sure. It was at this time, during my own exam studies, that I was counting down to my exam date and was desperate to get some sort of edge over the exam, some sort of advantage. The fact that I didn't know how to think like a manager, which the exam sounded like it was all about, pretty much had me thinking I'm going to fail this thing, right? And I know you've been trying your best to get a grip on this, how to think like a manager too. I can feel it. I can feel your curiosity and frustration through this monitor or phone screen or tablet that you're looking at and listening to right now, as if a distortion in time and space just connected through cyberspace. I can feel it. Let me start with this. If you keep asking why throughout your CISSP studies and trying to understand how to think like a manager, believe me, you will eventually gain the necessary clairvoyance into understanding this question. Let's take a look at why it is important to ask why when thinking like a manager. Why is it important to ask why for the CISSP exam? Because asking why is much more important than any of the other questions like how, when, what, and where. If you ask why enough times, you will eventually answer all those other questions anyway. And at the same time, reach the ultimate reason and the ultimate high-level answer. Let me just quickly go through an example of asking why continuously. Here is a simple question you can ask yourself during the course of your CISSP studies. Why do we have a firewall? To protect our network. That's the technical answer, okay? Why do we have to protect our network? Because of the data, because of the value of the information, because the servers on the network may contain personally identifiable information or have other confidential data, okay? So you have now reached a mix of technical and high-level answers. PII, confidential data, these are high-level answers. Protecting the network, that's a technical answer. Data on servers is a technical answer, and talking about the confidentiality of data is a high-level answer. Now ask, why do we need to protect private or confidential data? Because it holds value to our organization, and the loss of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that data is going to cost us, both in financial terms and for the company's reputation. So now we're starting to get into the high-level reason. When we're talking about financial numbers with quantitative analysis, or how the company is going to look to customers and competitors, these are now qualitative answers. Both these combined, these are now becoming more high-level answers from our very simple technical question of why do we have a firewall? Now we're thinking like a manager. Do you see what I'm saying? Asking why do we have a firewall and then saying it is to protect our network is a technical answer, but continuing to ask why even more and seeing that we're protecting the network and servers because they may affect the business objectives of the company, all of a sudden brings us to a more high-level answer. Continuously asking why while studying for the CISSP exam will automatically divert you from a technical thinking perspective to one that aligns more with a high-level manager. I mean, try this. Ask a network engineer why we have a firewall and ask a manager why we have a firewall. And I guarantee you 100% you will get two completely different answers. Why do you have to think like a manager for the CISSP exam? Because thinking like a manager requires a high-level view of the organization. Let's take a look at another visual example of all the points we have to cover as a manager while studying for the CISSP. Thinking like a manager means you have to have a high-level interconnected understanding. What do we mean by interconnected understanding? Now, as I have been grinding every night for the last 2,000 nights of my life as a CISSP instructor, I have found that everything in one CISSP domain relates to everything else in the other CISSP domains. One thing relates to everything else by some small degree. Firewalls relate to database security. Database security relates to proper physical security facility design. Physical security design relates to defense in depth. Defense in depth relates to encryption. It's all interconnected. That's the reason we have 8 domains in the CISSP common body of knowledge. The best thing you can do for yourself when trying to think like a manager is not to think all of those domains as separate domains, but as a single fluid entity. One domain relates to another. There is overlap. It's swimming with overlap. The policies, procedures, standards, baselines we establish in Domain 1, Security and Risk Management, are exactly what determines the guiding factors of what happens in Domains 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's when you understand how all 8 of these domains come together, do you truly understand what it is to think like a manager and pass your CISSP exam. And you'll find that in doing so, whether you pass the CISSP exam or not, you will have become a better security professional. I've been saying that since 2015. My goal, Prab's goal, is not to just help you pass the CISSP exam, but to make you a better security professional. Look, 2 things will happen when you take your CISSP exam. You'll pass it, or you'll have taken the most expensive and most realistic practice exam question set there is. Whatever the result, you will have been a more knowledgeable security professional than you were a few hours ago, a day ago, a week ago, or months before that. Let's take a quick look at what it means to have a high-level interconnected understanding as a manager. Let's look at the central vector right there. What does a manager think about when handling confidential information? If you were to look at Domain 1, they would first need a classification policy from management. Right? Everything needs policy in the CISSP. You've heard it all before. Nothing gets done without policy. And as you shift to Domain 2, now that confidential information needs a classification level, a metadata tag, which is confidential. A manager then has to think about Domain 3, what encryption type to use. If this is data at rest, are you going to use AES 256, the strongest symmetric encryption algorithm there is today? Or are you going to use triple DES? You have to understand the encryption type is reflective of the value of the information. And in Domain 4, managers think about, well, we have this data at rest, and even though it's encrypted, we still need a firewall to protect the outer perimeter of the network. So now you've traversed from Domain 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go on to Domain 5. If the data is in the cloud, you need to learn about cloud identity management. Managers think about identity access and management. It's what Domain 5 is all about. And as you go around the circle, now you come on to Domain 6, vulnerability assessment. You're going to do a vulnerability assessment of the environment where that confidential data is. So in doing so, you can transfer that knowledge to Domain 7 in case of an incident. So you're prepared for incident response. Again, it's not just about labeling data as confidential and then saying we're done. You have to think about everything else in these domains, which includes the most important, incident response. Manager has to think about that as well. What to do in case there's a breach of this data. Unplugging your server isn't it. There's a whole process to know about that. And then Domain 8, you're going to have to know about database security. The database on which this data is, how secure is that? Was there a proper software development lifecycle model followed to protect that data, to design the database? What is our CMMI level, capability maturity model integration level? Are we part of that? A manager just think about all of that. Okay. Thanks. So
I'm sorry, Luke. I'm really sorry.
No, that's not a problem. Hey, Prab, it's life, man. We're under, everyone's at home. We're running our lives, our jobs.
I already muted the candidate. Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So in that box right there with the orange circle, you can put in anything. What does a manager think about when handling confidential information? What does a network engineer think about or what does a manager think about when a network engineer has implemented a security policy on the firewall? If you were a technical person and I asked you, how do you handle confidential information? Firewall, encryption. That's it. But if you're a manager, you got to think about all these things. Okay? That's a high-level view of why you have to think like a manager in order to successfully answer the questions on the CISSP exam, a security exam, a business exam, an exam that tests not just your understanding of keeping a business running, but also an understanding of the security industry's lexicon.
Luke, there is one question I would like to present because this is one of the questions from the participants. When it comes to domain 3, there is a topic called cryptography we have, right?
Yep.
So when we say a think like a manager, right, when it comes to the encryption usage, AES is better than DES, or DES is better than AES, or ECC versus RSA, whatever it is, okay? So do you think so we need to understand something in a very detailed, like, how particular algorithm works, or, I believe this is the normal question from all the participants when it comes to domain 3, because cryptography is something, it's like a very complex topic. And the person who is not a technical person, he always struggle with cryptography and in the domain 4, which is called as a security protocols. Correct me if I'm wrong, team. Those who are part of this session today. So what is your thoughts? What is your inputs for those particular section, which is normally we
Yes.
receive as a feedback and question from participants? Yeah. Over to you, Luke.
The reason, if it's in our CISSP book,
I support your session as well.
I'm sorry, you support what?
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I'm saying I support what he just said. You look at issues like this. This has got 5 operating modes. Do you need to go into detail to understand all those modes, how they operate from the perspective of a manager?
Look, Sean Harris and Mike Chappell
Okay, I think that was my contribution.
Didn't write these books for nothing. There's a reason they included the details of cryptography. Do you have to know them in exact detail? Do you have to know how many CPU cycles AES 256 goes through per clock cycle? No. As a manager, you have to know that AES 256 uses more processing power than triple DES. You have to know that AES 256 is unbreakable right now, and triple DES has been broken, or is a weaker function. And you have to know why it's a weaker function and why AES is stronger. Dependent on that information, then you can apply those to the type of protection you're going to do. If you're on a call with your customers and they ask you, should we use AES 256 or triple DES? And you're the manager, you're going to have to answer that. And that's why it's in our CISSP books, so you can answer it in detail and talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, I'm going to go into that in the technical knowledge folder.
Thanks,
so the answer to your question, Prab, is you got to know that.
Thank you.
Don't skip on anything. Because the one thing that you're going to skip on is exactly what the CAT exam is going to figure out that you don't know, and you'll get nothing but those questions. Don't let it overpower you like that. Okay?
Sure.
So we've answered why it is important to think like a manager, and we've answered why it is important to keep asking why. Now let's take a look at some primary concepts of thinking like a manager. As in, let's take a look at the concepts that will align your thought process with that of an information security manager. Everyone still with me? You guys awake?
Yes, Luke, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
just kidding.
Yeah,
sometimes I can, sometimes I feel that.
Now this will be a one-side debate, so they can just share the questions in the chat box. So I'm consolidating all the questions here.
My biggest fear is boring everybody. I don't want to bore you.
Yeah. So one of the participant has raised the point here: can't sleep when Luke is here. So it's one of the good feedback, right?
Okay, sounds good.
Go ahead.
And thank you to everyone who's staying up later at night in the evening as well. Okay, let's quickly look at some primary concepts of thinking like a manager and just general things to remember while taking the CISSP exam. A lot of people ask me, what do we need to memorize for the CISSP exam, or what do we need to write down on that piece of paper during the exam? Back when I took the exam, I pretty much wrote down things like the OSI model layers, or port numbers, or the different symmetric encryption types, or those annoying little desmos to remember, like, oh, it uses 56 usable bits, but it actually has 64 bits. For some reason, that just screamed out like, hey, make sure you know this. This is definitely going to be an exam. Everyone thinks that for some reason. That's like the one encryption fact that everyone tries to remember. And but none of that really mattered. Initialization vectors or cipher block chaining. What I should have written down was the following we're about to go over. And thanks to Randy Nguyen for insight into these topics as well. And Randy, thank you for your service, okay? The first one should be no surprise. Human safety is the top priority. There is a simple reason we protect the lives of humans. And the famous astronomer Carl Sagan said it best. Out of 100 billion galaxies, you will not find another human. The billions of years of complex evolution that took place for us humans to be here are at an astronomical odds to occur anywhere else in the galaxy. Protect and save your fellow human beings at all costs. And we'll go more into human safety right after all this. The next one, you may be faced with decisions. Sorry, I'm drinking water here just to propel myself here. Behave ethically. Laws versus boss. You may be faced with decisions in your security career where ethics will play a strong role. It is at this point where you have to decide whether to follow your ethics or that of the organization. It's not an easy choice. Nothing in security is always an easy choice. As we saw from that diagram, as a manager, you have multiple things to think about, which is why in security, you get paid the big bucks, okay? And remember, the CISSP Code of Ethics is very testable on the exam. As a security professional and as a manager, your knowledge will only increase if you know the Code of Ethics and how to apply them. I'll just say what Dr. King has said. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Behave the way you know deep down is the right way. And if you have doubts, then refer to the ISC Squared Code of Ethics. Remember, they are testable and doesn't just apply to being a security manager, but security professionals from all realms. The third one is business continuity. Business will not fail. Do not let the business fail. Have a BCP.
Luke, I want to interrupt here one point. As you said about ethically law versus the boss, there is a small advice to everyone. There is a CBK 4th edition is there, which is Adam book. In that, they have explained much in detail about this code of ethics, which is basically missing in the CyBEX and others. So it is my suggestion. And those who are referring the CISSP 4th edition, they have discussed about each and every canon in detail. That is very important for you to prepare, okay? Which is missing in CyBEX and other books. So it is my suggestion. Please do check the CBK 4th edition for all the 4 canon. Okay, PAPA, P-A-P-A. Sorry, Luke, I was just adding that point. I'm really sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Prab, you can interrupt me anytime you want. It's not a problem, okay? Again, do not let the business fail. Have a BCP DRP plan in place. This means that if there is a virus on a server, unplugging it isn't going to save the business. We don't know what that's going to do. But having a proper incident response plan is going to save the business. Maximize corporate profits. Don't get it twisted, guys. Next to human life, the most important thing for a business is to make money. Businesses love the smell of money. They love making it. The only thing they don't like is wasting or spending it. Maximize your corporate profits. Help your company make money, which also means implement policies, procedures, and other processes to save money, make money, and not to waste money. Avoid or minimize threats. To understand this, you have to understand the management decisions in your CISSP study guides, such as accepting, avoiding, rejecting, or transferring risk. Make sure to know those. Learning about those will align with topic number 5. And I could go on about all these in greater detail. On topic number 5, I can just spend 6 hours talking about that, but we don't have 6 hours. So I'm just kind of flying through these. Any elaboration? Talk to Prab. Topic 6, all controls must be cost justified. Don't spend more money than you have to. And don't spend too little money on a valuable asset. Like, don't spend $15 on a shelf from eBay to put your Rolex watch on. You want a shelf that's going to last and going to give you the confidence your expensive watch isn't going to fall to the floor and break. Or an example is, Don't spend too much on a countermeasure that costs more than an asset. Don't spend $5,000 on a firewall to protect an asset that is valued at $1,000. Okay. Senior management must drive the security program. Look at this webinar right now. I am just a participant. Who's the senior management in this webinar? Prab. He is driving this webinar. He's telling
Again,
people
I want to hijack. Please don't misinterpret the information here. You are the senior management. I'm a custodian. I'm just managing the access and everything. So this is a live example we're giving about. You are a data owner, and I'm just managing the access to make sure everyone should be on the same channel. Yeah. Please don't misinterpret.
Prab, you are the board of directors to me. Okay. This is your show. I'm just providing here. So
this is our show, not your mine. This is our show. This is our show for our students and clients.
You got
our aspirants. Yeah.
That point, senior management's drive the security program, is one of the most important things you can learn. As in, your coworker doesn't get to tell you to start an information security program, or your supervisor or manager. They don't just get you to tell you that. It must come from senior management. That is part of thinking like a manager. And even then, even your manager doesn't get to tell you to do something or start a new project unless it's been signed off by management. Your manager just can't say, hey dude, make sure you have a clean desk policy. And if you ask why, they don't get to say, because I said so. No, that's not a good manager. A good manager will say that it is good practice in order to prepare for our ISO 27001 certification. That's a good reason to have a clean desk policy. Luckily, I had some great managers in my lifetime, and I looked up to them, and they were instrumental in helping me pass the CISSP exam just by being who they are. Okay. Number 8, security professional has no decision-making authority unless assigned by management. Just because you're getting paid so much money doesn't mean you get to do stuff without asking. When taking the CISSP exam, act like you are a hired consultant in the company. You don't want to touch anything. Pretend, this is what you should pretend. Pretend you got hired, then turned on your Zoom conference meeting, because we're under lockdown, right? And you're attending a meeting with an organization's security management and security team to go over their assets. You then just advise them, because you physically don't get to touch anything because you're behind a monitor. That's actually pretty good advice now that I think about it. When you're taking the CISSP exam, pretend you are a security consultant in a Zoom meeting only. You are not at the company site and you can't touch anything. You can just advise over Zoom. That's it. You know what? Yeah, do that actually. Now that I think about it, that's a solid way of looking at it. When you're in the testing center and looking at the computer monitor of questions, just pretend you are being asked these questions by an actual organization and respond that way. Don't touch, because you can't, just advise. Last one is use automated tools where appropriate. Some things a machine can just do better and faster than humans, right? A manager will use automated tools so they don't tie up a systems administrator to add accounts manually or have a security team manually scan devices for vulnerabilities. A vulnerability scanner can do a much better and faster job because it was created and built for that. Okay? Just another way to save time and money. Thinking like a manager. Those are my top 9 recommended ways to think like a manager. Let's check out this folder on safety.
So Luke, again, I want to hijack your session here. Just a small example. Can you share with the participants in which conditions we can go with the automations and in which conditions we can go for the manual efforts? I believe it is also one of the questions which is raised by one of the participants, I think 7 to 8 participants, about, in which conditions we can go for automation, or in which conditions we can go for the, manual case, or, the manual process, if you can basically highlight.
Say you have a security incident and event management, SIEM, and you have 2 security engineers assigned to a SIM environment, and they're supposed to take care of everything. An environment of 60 devices. They are not going to go to all 60 devices and check the logs. You need to write a Python script or some kind of script to run those scripts and retrieve those logs. The most important part of automated tools, to answer your question, Prab, is checking logs. You don't want that to be manual because it's time consuming, just taking all that raw data. Right? You want there are plenty of vulnerability scanners like Nessus Scan or GFI LandGuard that were built to look for vulnerabilities. You don't need to assign precious resources and personnel to do that. So basically, to answer your question, anything that can be automated, do that. Make it automated.
Great. Thanks, Luke.
Yep. Let's look at work safety. With this pandemic, I'm too scared to even touch a doorknob, much less go into an office. So work safety is very important. The very first thing you see on here is safety first. Then you see someone wearing a protective headgear, protection, physical security. You have regulations. We don't follow regulations just to follow regulations. You do it to save a human life, like the fire standards. The hazard signs, the actual sign of the hazards. Health insurance provided by your company. They don't want you to get sick. Or if you do get sick, you have a plan, a backup plan. So in your CISSP studies, when you see something like BCP DRP, first try to relate it to human life. Human life is the #1 priority for BCP DRP. Only after that is it availability. And then after that is the more technical answer of recovery and restoration. As far as physical environment, there is CPTED, one of my favorite things, crime prevention through environmental design. There isn't a lot of data centers in Florida here, but I do see, like, since it's like nice and sunny and good, lots of weather for growing trees will be built around a facility to hide people from looking in or anything like that. So that's facility security. You're stopping intruders from coming in to save human life. Consider the physical environment in parallel to saving human life. Same with awareness signs, like, electrical sign, please be aware, or if you see something, say something. These are all to preserve human life. Even in the enterprise, system resilience. I'm not talking about, server system. I'm talking about electrical systems, electrical grids, water, power dams, or what's that called, SCADA. You keep these up because these are critical national infrastructures of national security. In the U.S., it's the Department of Homeland Security that oversees it. So they're trying to make sure all this is running so our heart keeps beating. Same with intrusion detection. I'm not talking about a technical thing. I'm talking about those like turnstiles or like a fire, it's not a firewall, closed circuit camera to look for intrusions. What's that thing called at a data center? Man traps, going in and out. You need to learn about piggybacking or following someone in. Same with power and lighting. You're learning about lighting and candle power and fire extinguishers and the types of glass, not because you're going to be tested on them, but you have to keep those in mind when you're taking the CISSP exam, what they're for, and most importantly, which situation you're going to use them in. Okay? Just one more example on this is, if there's a door and there's a fire, if there's an electronically gauged door and there's a fire, how do you want that door to act in case of a fire? The CISSP term is fail safe, fail open. If there's a fire, you don't want that door to lock automatically. You want that to open so people can get out. Okay? Value and cost. There's a difference between value and cost. I don't think the CISSP books go into this. An asset is a straight fixed cost. Purchasing a $5,000 firewall is a cost. Sorry, I took a drink of water. The fact that the same firewall protects multiple web servers, which if compromised would cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's the value. Value and cost are two different things. I don't think the CISSP study guides go into value and cost. Maybe the Sean Harris, because that book goes into everything. It's important to know the difference. Let's take a look at an example using GDPR. What is the cost of GDPR compliance? Say your company is a brand new company. They're dealing with European Union citizens, and it's found out that your company needs to spend $10,000 to be GDPR compliant. And to be compliant means you have to know the principles of GDPR, the workings of it, the articles, Article 50, Article 51, and the roles and responsibilities. What are those? Data processor, data, one of those. That's the cost. It's just going to cost you $10,000 to get compliant. Whether your management does that or not is the real decision. Suppose you don't do GDPR compliant. You say, I'm not going to do it. I deal with European Union citizens, but you know what? I'm just not going to do it. Well, that can cost you a potential revenue of $100,000 lost from non-compliance. If I live in like Sweden or France, and I see that your company is not going to take the steps to protect my personal data, I'm just going to say I'm not going to do business with you. The impact from this, six-figure income loss, revenue loss. Suppose you do have EU citizen data and you're not GDPR compliant and there's a breach. Oh, that's $1 million fine. And I think that's on the low end. Millions. Companies have been fined millions. So by just not spending the cost of $10,000, you've lost a value of $100,000 and you've been fined $1 million. Okay? Cost, value. Very important to know for the CISSP exam. Yep, cost-benefit analysis. Have to do that. Thinking like a man.
Session again here, Luke. Sorry for hijacking your session.
No problem.
I thought we are talking about GDPR. So small information I would like to share with everyone. In GDPR, when you're preparing for the exam in GDPR principles, you need to have a good understanding of all the 6 principles. And along with that, the security breach reporting and the role of a data protection officer. So when you're preparing for this, make sure you should have a good understanding of the GDPR 6 principles and OECD principles too. Because we got a lot of questions in the chat box. Does it privacy important? Yes, privacy important. So GDPR, OECD is both are quite important for the exam. Okay, over to you, Luke. Thank you.
Prab, the interruptions are welcome. It gives me a time to drink my water and kind of get hydrated again. What Prab said is correct, and
hope it is drinks. It's not other
just
drinks.
Water.
Right?
Just water. No, no beer this
okay,
time.
Okay.
No beer this time. That's a personal
Then
thing.
it's okay.
I got to be responsible. There's a lot of people on this.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Because in CISSP we call writing it does not mean it happens. Go look and verify. CISSP is more like a risk advisory.
Yeah, trust but verify.
Whatever thing I'm trusting. Trusting is a primary principle here that we are keeping. Okay.
Just water, I promise. Yeah, I'm sure Prab and I get a lot of questions about do we have to memorize the U.S. laws? Look, we can't really say what you have to or not have to do for the CISSP exam because that is against the NDA. U.S. law, this is an international exam. Why would you need to know U.S. laws? I'm going to say you probably don't have to know this. GDPR is an international regulation. So that's why you have to know that. But should you just skip over the U.S. law section? No, don't do that. The U.S. sometimes serves as a guiding line for laws for the rest of the world, like an example. So understand Sarbanes-Oxley, why it was created. Understand Graham-Leach-Bailey, why it was created. Okay? Okay, process, roles, and responsibilities. Prab, how am I doing on time?
It's okay. You can. It's your stage. So
Okay.
I'm enjoying.
Okay, me too.
If everyone okay with that.
Thinking like a manager means to know the processes that you study in your CISSP books. You have to know the processes. You have to know the roles involved in those processes. And you have to know the responsibility of those roles in those processes. Let's take a look at a few important examples, and we'll just run through this thing. Do not skip on your software development lifecycle. Very important process. Never skip your BCP DRP process. You gotta know that. If you don't study your BCP DRP, specifically the business impact analysis, you will fail the CISSP exam. Study your BCP DRP process. Incident response, your whole security life is going to be reactionary. It's going to be nothing but reacting to incidents. Know your incident response process. Remember, these aren't topics or subjects. These are all processes. There's multiple steps involved in those. PKI, public key infrastructure. Right. Have to know that process. Cloud vendor. It's not just about opening an AWS account and creating, VM machines. There's a whole process to that. Before engaging AWS or Azure, you have to check out their risk. What risk do they present? Can they provide the right coverage for you? These are all done through a service level agreement. CISSP topic. Data handling. Like we talked about our manager, confidential information. Is it just about labeling it confidential and being done? No, there is a handling process. Information security program, big process. You can probably say the information security program drives all the other processes. So now I want to focus on what roles are involved in each of these processes. I'm not going to talk about every single role, otherwise we'll be here for 6 hours, and I truly will be boring. So for the software development lifecycle, what role is involved in that? Instinctively, I think you think programmer, developer, software tester. The more important role to focus on is management. Why? Because it is their responsibility in the first step to approve the funding and acknowledge the security controls, and making sure that you do have developers and software testers and software engineers available who are going to get paid to do this, who are being told to do this. And as a security professional, you have to tell them in that first stage of Sdlc about security. If they had it their way, they would never incorporate security. You as a security professional have to tell them, because the first step of the Sdlc is the most management-facing step. They're only going to get involved in the first step. They're not going to be there when they ask, what kind of code do we have to use? They don't care about that. So take this time and opportunity to make sure they know about security. BCP DRP, departmental leaders. Why do we need departmental leaders in the BCP DRP? Because they need to provide input during the business impact analysis. Business impact analysis is an analysis of the critical business functions throughout each department. Who knows each department best? The leader of that department. You need them in the BIA. Incident response. Why do you need a manager during an incident response? I mean, it's always the technical guys, the CCIEs, the security, the CISSPs, the CEHs who are like, incident, we're the blue team. Let's go. We're going to get this covered. Because the manager has to make the decision on what to do. Unless there's a set process, nobody's going to know what to do. Everyone's going to be like, well, I want to shut down the server. Well, I want to keep the server going. Well, I want to black hole the traffic this way, and all these other fancy technical terms. Doesn't matter. You do what the manager tells you to do. You look to that person for the decision of an incident response. Because a manager knows if the incident is just a virus in a computer and it's not that big of a deal, maybe shut down the server at 5 p.m. after business. But if it's a worm that propagates throughout the network, maybe immediately shut that down so more damage can't be done. Okay? PKI, Certificate Authority. Why is a certificate authority an important role in PKI? Simple reason, provides trust. It provides a third-party trust for a client and server to trust each other. Cloud vendor, cloud service provider. What role do they play? Security of infrastructure. If you're going to get a SaaS, software as a service, platform as a service, it's not your responsibility to secure that software. That's the cloud service provider's responsibility. Okay? That's their role. The data, that's your responsibility. Data handling, as we have said. Important term. If you don't know the term data owner, you will fail the CISSP exam. Why do we need a data owner? For data classification. Why do we need a data classification? So we know how to assign the proper protections to that asset. Again, that word why, it floats everywhere. Information security program. Why do we need a CISO for information security program? Because of tip number 6 or 7 from the previous slide. Senior management must drive the information security program or any other business-driven decisions. Right? Yeah, they're the driving factor. So these are by no means any of the total process, roles, and responsibilities, but get to think of this list as you go through your studies.
I want to hijack the session here. Just need to add one point. The Luke shared this point called as a data owner and CISO. So the Luke book we have called How to Think Like a Manager for CISSP Exam. In that book, he has discussed this question and he has given a very good explanation. So those who are basically always get confused regarding the management aspects, you can basically check his book, and that book basically has a well-written explanation about these roles. Over to you, Luke. Thank you.
Thanks, Prab. Okay, process, roles, responsibilities. And we're done with primary concepts and on to the fun stuff, technical knowledge. This is either welcoming for you. This picture will either welcome you into knowledge that you already have or make you cringe. Do you need to have technical knowledge for the CISSP exam? I'll answer it this way. Simple question. Do you understand this network architecture? Do you understand what's going on here? Do you know what a switch is? Do you know what a fiber optic cable is? UTP, hub. Do you know what kind of symmetric and asymmetric encryption ciphers there are? AES, PKI, IPsec, Blowfish. Do you know when and why to use them? Do you know what a digital signature is? Do you know what it's like what's the difference between signing by a private key and encrypting by a public key? You got to know that kind of stuff. Those are technical stuff. This is technical stuff you need to know. Look, the CISSP is going to ask you technical questions, okay? Everyone says think like a manager. It doesn't mean there's no technical questions. It's just not like that. You're going to get technical questions. Do you know where to put an IDS IPS? Do you know the difference between an IDS IPS? You have to know that. Do you know what IPsec is? Do you know that it runs on the firewall? Do you know, once you understand how IPsec works, you will understand that it upholds confidentiality, integrity, authentication, right? These are things you have to know. It's technical stuff. It's very technical. And if you don't have technical knowledge in these things, do what I do. Hack the knowledge. Go to YouTube, type in how to configure IPsec VPN on firewalls, and look how those people do it. Look how the CCIEs, the CCNAs do it, and pretend you're at your job and you're watching your technical guy do that. You've now gotten your technical knowledge from
But
that.
we also have a shortcut here, Luke. You have a very good blog on the IPsec with CISSP. Why are you hiding that?
Do
It
I?
is already there.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I'll make sure
You
to
have
provide
that. I'm just sharing the link.
Gotcha. I mean, Prab, I don't know what I did yesterday.
That is
much
a
less
shortcut.
what I did. Yeah, I don't know what I did 5 minutes ago or yesterday, much less what I did years ago. You know what I mean? But thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, I
know
shared the link with everyone regarding the IPsec.
Awesome. Do you know what federated identity
For data
management
custodian.
is? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I approve. As Data and I approve. Thank you for that. Do you know what a federated identity management is? Do you know the cloud technologies? Private cloud, public cloud. Do you know that? You got to know that. It's the technical stuff. You have to know the technical knowledge in order to understand the high-level choices you're presented with on the exam. Do you know what 802.1x is? If there's nothing about 802.1x that you know at least that is a layer 2 functionality at the switch. RDP, remote access security. Do you understand why RDP exists? What are the security concerns with RDP? How do we secure it? Guess what? You can use IPsec. You can use federated identity management with single sign-on for RDP remote access. Everything correlates to everything else. Kerberos, everyone's favorite topic. You know, you spend hours learning about ticket granting server, three-headed dog, printer access. And at the end, people are like, I studied so much, I can memorize it and ace that on the exam. I know for sure that the exam's going to ask about a three-headed dog. No. For Kerberos, understand the weaknesses and disadvantages, which is, I guess, the same thing. Understand the strengths and disadvantages. KDC is a single point of failure. Have redundancy for that, right? You know, I mean, know about the tickets and everything and why the mechanism of Kerberos simply is that it's a mechanism so passwords are not exchanged for access. VLANs. Do you know VLANs? You don't have to know VLANs, but it's good to know VLANs. Same with everything in the CISSP. It's good to know things. Virtual LANs, broadcast domain, collision domain. Do you know the difference between TCP UDP? I strongly suggest you know the difference between TCP UDP. Which one requires a connection? Which one doesn't require a connection? Which one is connectionless? When would you use something that is UDP? And when would you use something that requires TCP? Yeah, DNS port 53, speaking of ports, OSI model. DNS is port 53, UDP, to exchange the queries. But we use DNS port 53 with TCP for zone transfers. Why do we need TCP for zone transfers and UDP for just DNS queries? You got to know that. Because at a high level for the manager, they have to decide that, hey, if we're going to do zone transfer using TCP, it's going to take a little bit more effort. It's going to take the engineer a little bit more time to configure that instead of just automatically configuring DNS UDP and letting it do its course. Okay? Do you need to have technical knowledge for the CISSP exam? As much as you might not want to hear it? Yeah, you do. Okay, let's talk about the book now. I just want to get all that out of the way before we talk about the book. Everything I just talked about is new stuff. Not all of that is found in the book, so this is actual stuff new. No, everything I just laid out isn't also in the book. Otherwise, what's the point of this session? I'm going to give you new information, not stuff that's already out there. Hey, do you like that cover?
So,
that
Luke,
one?
one thing is that Luke just need to understand something. You know, the book that you're talking about here, the study notes, the How to Think Like a Manager. Only recently, just 2 days back, my 2 clients has cleared the exam. My 2 gladiators has cleared the exam, and it is a well-written book. So I thought,
great.
I also, requested you to just have a high-level overview about this book in this session, because this book is really worth, to be frank. I have seen my gladiators who are literally struggling with answering the questions and all that. They have referred this book and they have cleared the exam. So I thought, Luke,
Nice.
I have requested the Luke to have a high-level overview about this book and how to read this book and when to read this book. So Luke, over to you. Thank you.
Hey, congratulations to those gladiators for passing. That's wonderful news. Do you guys like this cover? My wife actually came up with the idea when she kept hearing me talking about IPsec VPN tunnels. I always used to talk about encryption and decryption, and she was just like, why don't you put something unlocking? Unlocking, by unlocking, she meant decryption. So that was her idea. It's got nice little icons on it, like little keys and USB keys and computers and all that kind of stuff. I love that cover.
You can't override senior management decision, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. She is senior management, and she she's the most important thing to me. Very, very important. And she gave a good suggestion, and I really like that cover. So with that cover, it's the lock is unlocking. I am unlocking your knowledge of how to think like a manager, or something like that. This is how the book's laid out. There is a page that has a practice CISSP-related question. It's set up just like any other practice question you take, a question and 4 choices. Right underneath the question is the suggested mentality and strategy that should be running through your mind at this time. What this is doing is making you understand that don't just rush into answering the question right away. You have too much writing in your life and your job to do that. You spent all this time studying, so don't just rush. Try to hyper-analyze every single choice. All the choices may seem like the right answer, but you have to choose the best answer. You will always hear me say that it is not only important to find the right answer, but it is, say it with me, more important to know why the other choices are wrong. This book emphasizes that no stone should be unturned when it comes to answering CISP practice and real questions. Because the more work you put in while you're studying, the faster, the better, and more confidently you will be able to handle the real exam questions. The better you'll be prepared to take them on because you went through this arduous process of hyper-analysis beforehand. Yeah, everyone tells you how to take the CISP exam, but nobody tells you how to think during the course of the exam. They think you can do that by yourself, but sometimes you just need a little bit of help. The questions in the book are here to help you establish the patience, discipline, and stamina to build the endurance required to sit through the CISP CAT exam. This particular question asks, expenses, extra responsibilities, and reduced profits are a result of what? And the choices are security, efficiency, convenience, and operability. Classic thinking like a manager. And in the exam strategy section, information is provided about each of the choices, arguing whether it could or could not be the answer. Within these pages of questions and answers, you will find quick notes and graphics that identify when to think like a manager and what to think given the situation. Right? So this is how it's laid out. I'm not going to read over it because, frankly, you can just read over it. And I mean, I know this is copyright material, but right now, nothing is stopping you from screenshotting this and reading it later. So for those who want to screenshot it, I'll let you screenshot it right now. You know, after writing this book, I guess I'm a very approachable guy. I must be the only CISP author in the world where people come to me and comfortably ask me, in a very warm regard, how can I get a PDF or a non-copyright version of this book? Can you help me with that? I'm like, dude, I wrote this book. I can't possibly give you an illegal copy. It's unbecoming of a security professional. But I am
It's been
complimented
heard.
that you can, right? But I am complimented that you can come to me in a very friendly manner and ask for an illegal copy. For some reason, I like that. For some reason, I don't know why. Now in the
That might
explanation
be his due
section,
diligence.
I guess I'm like,
That
hey,
might be his due diligence.
I can't give you an illegal copy because one, I wrote the book, and two, I can't stop you from looking for one. But you know, I advise getting it the right way, like we all are. Within these pages of questions and answers, you will find quick notes and graphics that identify when to think like a manager and when to think as a given situation. Now, in the explanation section, the correct answer is identified in orange. But really, the answer is the least important part of the explanation, provided is a thorough understanding of why security is the answer to this question and why the other choices are not the answer. Remember, it asked about what reduces profits, creates more work, and whatever the other question was. Security. Security is always an afterthought. Management isn't going to come out and be like, hey, I really want to spend some money on the security program. What do you guys got for me? It's more like the security professional going, hey, you desperately need to spend some money to secure this thing. Provided is a thorough understanding of why security is the answer. And much like the practice questions section throughout the whole book, various tips of how to think like a manager or core CISP concepts is provided. That's how this entire book is like. It's 25 questions of just this kind of layout. You get a question with an analysis of choices, and then the answer with a complete explanation. It tells why it is important to get approval from management instead of just jumping in and fixing problems. It tells you why it's important to perform a risk analysis after a major change or acquisition in an organization. It tells you how to handle questions with the words best, least, or most. or why security should be embedded not just at the beginning, but every step of the software development lifecycle. And that's how it should be too, right? What's the point of CISSP practice questions if a full explanation isn't provided, or at least some kind of explanation? I bet my entire reputation on that. That's all we want.
I
Someone
agree
to
with that. I
explain
haven't seen
something
any
to
book
us.
which basically give you. That's right, Luke. I haven't seen any book which basically give this kind of a explanation about like how to think like a manager, or this concept need to be think like a technical and all that. The way you have define this kind of a content in these books. So that is also one of my reasons that I was pushing you to just have a one small brief overview about your book to everyone, so they get a high level visibility about what kind of a book it is. Because
I
it has
wrote
not been, I believe it's the first time a session that in which you are presenting this kind of a first time, you're just presenting this kind of a the internal framework of your book. Correct me if I'm wrong.
this is not only the first time about a book presentation, this is the first time I'm doing a public presentation at all. I'm a very private person. I don't like to engage anybody. I don't like to do anything like that. I just do my videos and sit in my basement and enjoy time with my family. That's
Well,
all
we'll,
I'm going
we'll
to
see
do.
more videos from you. We'll have
Okay.
more sessions from you. That's for sure.
I'm only doing this for Prop because he's a good guy. I wrote this book
Yeah.
in the same form as if that's what I would have wanted in a book about thinking like a manager. Okay. How to use it. How to use this book. After you've completed the book, I hope you can still take the same tips, strategies, and thinking like a manager concepts and apply them to other CISSP questions. Once you keep doing this, you will retain the same mindset with taking the real exam. Instead of having to force yourself to think like a manager, it will come naturally. That's why you will find sprinkled throughout the book general tips of how to think like a manager given a situation, core CISSP concepts, and exam essentials. The Think Like a Manager icon are there to remind you about thinking about value, cost, processes, roles, responsibilities, and keep yourself in the realm of high-level thinking. And once you start reading the Think Like a Manager, and once you can come up with your own ways of thinking like a manager, the CISSP exam is yours. You will once you think of your own topics of thinking like a manager, you can walk into that testing center and own that exam, walk out with that, congratulations. Okay? The core CISSP concept icons are there to provide just some basic concepts of information security that are paramount to know. The CISSP is a test of concepts because concepts do not change. Whether you're studying for the CISSP exam or hired as the Chief Information Security Officer for a global organization, the concepts are the same. Whether your kid has the flu at home or you're trying to contain a global pandemic, the concepts are the same. Whether you're trying to send a space shuttle to the moon for the first time or sending supply rockets to a base on the moon, which will eventually be the relay point for the voyage to Mars, the same concepts can be applied. It's the same concepts. The rocket theory. You need 25,000. You need to jettison jet fuel exponentially and reach a maximum speed of 25,000 miles per hour to get out of this orbit. That's been the same for the space shuttle for the Apollo missions. It's the same for whatever Elon Musk is doing. 25,000 miles per hour to get out of this orbit, that doesn't change. This is why the CISSP is a vendor-neutral exam, the concepts of which can be applied to organizations that have anywhere from 10 users to 100,000. Okay? And the exam essentials icon will just add on a good bit of study habits. Just good general housekeeping exam habits. They can go into saying that you should go beyond your suggested CISSP books and venture into the realm of other sources. They talk about how to study, what to study. They will sharpen your sword for the exam itself. Okay? When to use it. And this is all dependent on experience. 6 months before the exam, it's going to be overwhelming. My book or any other book, it's overwhelming, especially if you've never taken the exam before or have any idea about it. At this point, you're going to you might find yourself trying to read to memorize, but the book is going to try and help you to read to understand right from the beginning. Security right from the beginning. And it can serve as a warning that if you've picked the CISSP exam as a thing that you're going to do, all the information in the book, not just mine, but anywhere else, it's a warning to you that, hey, you better be ready for this thing. This is not just like, a simple exam. This is a real thing. You're going to have to dedicate hours of your life to this, and you got to be serious. It's not $700 for nothing. Although yesterday I did find out that the Certified Ethical Hacker exam is like $1,100 or something like that. That is crazy. $1,200 for CEH exam? Wow. Manager mind, 3 months before the exam, if you start reading it, it's going to put you into that manager mindset. Right. It's going to put you in that manager mindset. It's going to give you exam strategies, and they might start to click, especially if you're studying your other CISSP books as well. And it's going to give you those core concepts. Concepts just can't be taught. You either know it or you don't. You either experience it or you don't. So this book outlines some general concepts that you may need to know as you progress through your studies. 1 month before the exam, 2 very important things that will serve you as a security professional. Patience and what's the other one? Discipline. You gotta have patience and discipline for this thing. 1 month before the book, because the questions are explained in such detail, in such painstaking detail, that it will instill discipline for you to respect the real exam and the real questions and read every single word and not to skip anything or take it for granted. And also time management, although this is a fairly new concept. If you're taking the exam for the first time, time management may be your biggest enemy, right? If you're taking the exam for a second time, you have a better idea of how to manage time. So when you're taking CISSP practice questions, think about your time. And I will say this, try to take your time for the first few questions to set a pace for yourself and take a lot of breaks. If you're given breaks, take them. They're like vacation hours at work. You use it or you lose it. I also like to say that, my book alone is not enough to pass the CISSP exam. I even put it in the book as a disclaimer that I am not responsible for the failure or the passing of your exam. I'm not responsible for your pass or your fail. I'm not responsible for your pass because it's just you in that testing center. I'm not
Luke,
there.
I want to
Prob's not
interrupt
there.
here.
Prob and I are here.
I want to interrupt. I want to interrupt here. This point is about when to use this book. It is a practical example I can give you about this book. Luke, what happened is the 2 participants who basically write this exam this week only, they refer this book week before the exam actually. You know why? They refer all the books, they practice all the questions. Now they want to know the thought process. Okay. So when they want to know the thought process, they basically purchase this book and that gives them a visibility. Okay, we know this firewall. Now what Luke is addressing, how to think like a manager for that firewall. Is it clear, team? So this book, it will not be a book that you can refer in a starting point where you have not read any other book, but this book is basically will be more effective when you complete all the books, questions and everything. So you just need to, have a high level understanding about, okay, I learned this concept. Now I need to understand Think Like a Manager, which can be referred by the Luke book. So this is how this book can be most effective if you're taking this week before the exam. And SNT questions is already there, which basically, if English is not your primary language, SNT questions, which is basically paragraph-based, scenario-based questions, it can improve your reading skills. It can improve your thought process. So with Luke Ahmed, this book, which is called Think Like a Manager with SNT question, it's a deadly combination for the exam preparation. I personally believe that, okay, more than Boson or any of the sets, Luke Ahmed exam engine with this Think Like a Manager is the best combination for preparing for the certification. That will give you a great heads up. It can improve your time management, it can improve your thought process, it can improve your reading skills if you are not a primary English reader. Sorry, Luke, I'm not doing advertisement, but I'm telling you the facts, which is basically shared by my participant. Yeah.
This is why you're senior management. That's why.
No.
Look,
And
the
second last point which I would like to add in the time management of CISSP, your first, don't go with this mindset, okay, I need to complete my exam in 100 questions. Don't ever try that. Go with the mindset, I have a 150 questions that I need to answer in 180 minutes. That is the most important thing you have to consider. Don't go with this mindset that I have to attempt this exam in 100 questions, which people do mistake. They get panic after 100 questions and then they basically, lose their concentration during the exam. So it is my suggestion, keep your 180 minutes for the 150 question. Okay, it is a trial tested method which I'm saying. Yeah, over to you, Luke. Thank you.
And don't rush through your CISP books or this book. This book isn't be like, oh, if I read this book, I'm going to pass. No, not at all. The thing about the CISP exam is that not my book, not other CISP books, my website, any other website, no test engine, nothing else available is even close to the questions found in the real exam. This is why the CISP is the CISP. What you are doing by reading and studying is to learn the concepts, the basic security practices found to be the best practice in the security field. The real exam doesn't care if you memorize any of the material. What it does is test if you can apply the concepts you learned to their questions. It's not a memorization exam. You have to first learn the concepts and then apply it by choosing the correct choice. The CISSP is not for those who need constant motivation. By studying, doing practice questions, and spending massive number of hours toward this thing, you are cultivating a discipline that will carry on with you for the rest of your life. Right now, if you are sacrificing, struggling, and staying up late nights on your journey to the CISP, I wrote this book for you. Good luck and thanks for watching. Prab, I'm ready for Q&A whenever you are.
Team, if you have any questions, you can basically post in the chat box. We're already running a bit 10 minutes late. So Luke, we have one question. Do we need to remember everything from book, and do we need to remember all the laws that we have? Like, is it important for remembering all?
This conference will now be recorded.
Luke, there's a question is called how to prepare for domain 4. What is your thoughts on how to prepare for domain 4? Because it is very technical.
If you don't have experience in Domain 4, it is difficult to understand. There is a reason Domain 4 is the biggest chapter in every single one of your CISP books. It's got the most pages. If you don't have experience in Domain 4, then you're going to find it really difficult. And it's not just you, it's everybody. Even I had difficulty. You have to go through that. Remember the diagram I just showed. If I were to tell you in a job interview, I have a router, I have a firewall, I have a server, I have a load balancer, and I have the internet. Take these and put them in order and draw them on the board. And tell me what layers of the OSI model they belong in, what protocols they use, and how would you troubleshoot an issue in between there. If the power is down, layer 1. Here's the thing about Domain 4 and the OSI model. This is for people who don't have experience. Learn the OSI model, then as you peruse through Domain 4, if you see a router, say, okay, a router, it's only IP-based, it belongs in layer 3. Okay, a browser, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, these are applications on my computer. So they're browsers, they use HTTPS 443, that means they're in the application layer. If you look at your books, that's exactly where they are. Application layer is HTTPS, things like DNS. If you're in front of your computer and you're interacting with a program, that's in the application layer. So the best way to understand Domain 4 is to understand the OSI model. And also what I mentioned, the hack I mentioned earlier. If you don't know a technology, go straight to YouTube and type in how to configure web, how to configure WPA2, how to configure the benefits of where to put the router or a firewall. Stateful versus packet filtering firewall. You have to know that. There's no way around it. Three-way handshake, TCP, UDP. You have to know that. What's the advantages? Why have we gotten rid of broadcast domains and have collision domains? Or why have we gotten rid of collision domains and now have broadcast domains? What creates broadcast domains? A switch. You have to know things like that.
There is one question, Luke, regarding SDLC. I don't have a sufficient experience on coding. So as an InfoSec manager, where should I focus when learning the SDLC? What is your thought in this?
Who asked that? What's that person's name?
His name is Akshay.
Akshay. I also don't have any coding experience. I am allergic to it. So I studied software development lifecycle and domain 8 the least. I was like, you know what? There's 7 other domains. I'm not going to get tested that much in domain 8. Guess what? I got a big surprise. You have to know, you don't need to code. I mean, if you've never coded anything, go to YouTube, type in how to code simple program, and look what they do. But if you really want to know about software development lifecycle and domain 8, read the sections in your CSP study guides, but the best resource for you is the National Institute of Standards and Technology document. Read that. It's a free document. It goes over the steps of the SDLC, the security considerations in the SDLC, and what to look for in the processes in the SDLC. Don't skip on the systems development lifecycle. That is one of the most important things to know for the CISSP exam, which is why it was on the slide. You don't have to
know. NIST 800-137 is there, a standard which you can refer for this particular thing, 137. Yeah. NIST 800-137, yeah.
So just get a high-level view of the processes and the individual functions of each process, and you should be okay. I understand the database stuff, that you don't have to really know coding, but it helps if you put your hands to the keyboard a few times. But I get it. It's intimidating. And if that domain is your weakest domain, then you just have to spend a little bit more time with it.
Hi Prab, hi Luke, Vineet, love this side. I have a quick question for Luke. At what point of our study plan we should sequence the SMT questions? So we are going through with our primary study material, which include going through with books and recording, etc. Should we attempt SMT questions at that point of our time, or should we first finish our primary reading or study material and then take the questions? What is your suggestion? Thank you.
The latter. Definitely, thank you for the question. Definitely read your study guide books, take some other practice questions, and then go for the study notes and theory questions, because they are incredibly difficult and they will destroy your confidence if you start them at the beginning. Because remember I said at the beginning, CSP materials serve as a warning. So if you start with study notes and theory practice questions right at the beginning, you're going to be slammed with just high-level questions, slammed with difficult topics, and you're just going to not want to do it. If you want to, you can, but I best suggest about 3 to 4 months before your exam. So not after you've done everything, but make it 3 months before your actual exam. And in those 3 months, you will have probably already read your books and practice questions anyway. Okay. And the thing about the study notes and theory questions is no one's ever gotten over 80%, not even me. And I made those questions. I barely get 100%. What they do is strengthen you to take the other questions like Boson or Cybex. You take study notes and theory questions and you get 56%, and you got 70% in your Cybex questions. If you get 70% on the study notes and theory questions, you will see that your score in the other test questions are actually going up because you're reading more and you're understanding it more. So the point of study notes and theory questions is to make the other practice questions easier.
Okay, and another follow-up question: how do we actually see? So we do our SMT and sorry.
Vinit, we're running already short of time because it's already 20 minutes late. You can just share your question in the chat box, because I also interrupt others to have a query in the chat box. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, Vinit. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So this is so Luke. Any last minute note you would like to share? You would like to share with everyone? The last minute note.
Just the fact that you are even taking the CISSP exam is an incredible thing to do. Nobody in your family and friends, I bet, know what the CISSP is or information security or know what you're talking about. So don't worry about failing or passing. Just the fact that you're taking it or have attempted it is a testament to you yourself in this elite industry. So I wish you good luck in all of that. Prab and I are here at all times. Good luck. Thank you for attending as well.
Thank you, team. Thank you so much. And whatever the questions you have, you can just share with Luke, and we together can help you to solve all those questions if time permits. I'm just saying the Cybex will be the better book that you can refer initially. And we'll be looking forward for this kind of a sessions, and we'll ensure that, okay, we have this kind of quality sessions later also, and I'm requesting Luke for another sessions also. I'm sure Luke will do that. So we'll try our best. Prashant is also planning to give. So we have more and more speakers who coming to discuss about CISSP. We'll keep the same momentum to make sure more and more people clear the CISSP exam. Thanks, Luke. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. We're looking forward for the other session also with the same parameter.
Thanks, Prabha, and thanks